Now, there were many mistakes made during Kamala Harris's 2024 presidential bid, but there was one that really outweighed the rest, and it was simply the media strategy that was adopted by her campaign. During the 2024 campaign, it was operated in a media environment of increasingly being dominated by podcasts, social media, and non-traditional outlets, something that Donald Trump used and was reportedly guided by his son to capitalize on this shift in prioritizing long-form, unscripted appearances on platforms like the Joe Rogan podcast, like the Lex Fridman show, and the All In podcast. And Kamala Harris and her campaign took the cautious approach, favoring scripted rallies, friendly media, and pre-recorded messages. And she is continuing to double down on the issues and the problems that allow Donald Trump to win the popular vote by 2.5 million votes and sweep all 7 swing states. Like, let's be honest about this. She's doubling down on these disastrous policies, the disastrous tactics that put her where she is right now. Because let's be honest about one thing. With Kamala Harris's record, Attorney General of California, Senator from California, Vice President of the United States, 2024 nominee for the Democrats, anyone without the name Kamala Harris with that record would be plowing forward. She would be the leader of the party. She'd be polling at 50% in most Democrat primary polls. But yet, for some reason, right now, Kamala Harris is completely out of the purview of the political arena. She's polling below 25% in the aggregate in 2028 election polls. And she continues to make the same mistakes. And the most recent one was in California. Recently, Tim Walz, her former running mate, was in California at the Democrat convention in California, the California Democrat Convention. And Harris, she had a golden opportunity here to rally 4,000 delegates and show that she is still the force in the party. Considering she is either going to run in 2028 or run to be the governor in 2026, you think this would be something she would be just going hard on. But instead, what does she do? She mailed in a pre-recorded 3-minute speech that landed like a balloon. Like, let's be honest about this. Delegates were not amused, and one called it a, quote, slap in the face. You know, this was one of the biggest issues she had during her 2024 campaign, was for avoiding voters on the ground. And this move just proves that she hasn't learned a single thing. She has not learned a single thing. And skipping this convention shows Harris is so out of touch and uninterested in rebuilding trust. And I don't think she could win, I don't think she'll win the California gubernatorial election, especially if it's 2 Democrats, which it most likely will be. It'll be 2 Democrats that move on to the general election. I don't think Kamala Harris will win. I honestly don't. Voters will see this. This was her plan B. This was her fallback option. Voters don't want that. And in a what I believe is a change environment, this will be a change election in California. I don't think this is helping her. And she's been dodging questions about running for governor, leaving Democrats in a complete lurch right here. And apparently she's holding this race, I could say, hostage with her indecision here, which is very similar to the 2024 campaign, where she didn't have a clear message, her campaign floundered, and it cost her tons of momentum. There's tons of momentum she could be leaning into right here, but she's not. Because refusing to commit now, Harris is alienating supporters who want a leader with a plan, not a politician who's playing it safe while rivals are hitting the ground running. It's like that's just the reality here. She's made so many mistakes. Go back to 2024. Look at all the issues. She skipped the Al Smith Dinner, which is a long-standing bipartisan charity event that's hosted by the Archdiocese in New York and is a must-have campaign stop for presidential candidates during election years. And it's known for their lighthearted roast and opportunities to kind of showcase some humor and relatability. And what does Kamala Harris do? She became the first major party presidential candidate to skip the event since Walter Mondale in 1984. Instead, opted for a pre-recorded message. Does that sound familiar? And she cited scheduling conflicts. Like, give me a break. Give me a break. And that was one of the things that reinforced the narrative that she was trying to be this risk averse. The same thing was with her media inaccessibility during the election. Harris did not hold a single press conference or major interview in the 3 weeks after becoming the nominee. which is a point that was echoed like outlets from the New York Times. Her campaign was reluctant to engage in unscripted press interactions, which was, they said it was to minimize campaign gaffes. But oh my gosh, she had more gaffes than any presidential candidate in history. Like how does that make sense? You are trying to be risk averse, but somehow she has more gaffes than anyone else, more word salads than anyone else. And of course, the few media appearances where she did join in, or that she did participate in, they were all on friendly networks. She went to the Call Her Daddy podcast, the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, The View, Howard Stern's radio show. These people were soft. They were friendly venues that did not challenge or make her go into substantive conversation about her policies. For example, the Call Her Daddy podcast, which was probably the best appearance she had, focused solely on women's issues and personal anecdotes, which she really avoided any serious, tough policy discussion. Even the White House News Photographer Association made serious complaints about the total reduction in access to the campaign. When in contrast, you had Donald Trump, who would engage, the guy would give five campaign rallies if he physically could every day. He would engage with conservative and mainstream media every day, calling reporters directly, giving interviews to outlets that he often criticized, like NBC, like the New York Times. And there could not be a bigger contrast between the two here. And of course, it was all unscripted interviews that they avoided. And the big one was Joe Rogan. There was huge criticism, and she's doing the same thing post-election. It's like you have not learned anything. Joe Rogan himself noted that Harris really excelled at delivering these pre-rehearsed speeches via teleprompter, but struggled seriously in off-the-cuff situations. It's like that's just the reality. What was her line that she'd give out? Oh, I was born in a working class family. I was, she would say every single time she would say it. And we've got video of it right here. Just listen.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle.
Every time she was raised as a middle-class kid, people got old of that. It did not work. Saying the same thing over and over and over again, it did not work. These pre-rehearsed lines and speeches, they just didn't work. Harris's team was extremely risk-averse, fearing that an unscripted set-in could lead to major gaffes or expose inconsistencies in her policy position. And there's a new book out by Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes, which describes her campaign as keeping her hermetically sealed to maintain her image, avoid tough questioning, and to derail or questioning that could derail her momentum. These were major missed opportunities in an election where people were looking for long-form, unscripted access to who their president was going to be. And obviously, like we said, the big one was Joe Rogan. The biggest issue the Democrats had in the 2024 election was their support with young men. Young men swung to Donald Trump in huge margins. And the Joe Rogan Experience is the most popular podcast in the U.S. with an 81% male audience, which 34% are males between 18 to 35, with an average of 14.5 million listeners per episode. And remember, they chop these videos up, put them out on YouTube, on Rumble. They're everywhere. And apparently Harris's campaign engaged in negotiations to be on the show, but ultimately declined. She tried to set the script. She tried to set how things were. You know how it works with Joe Rogan. Let's be honest about this. No staff, no one else is in the studio really except you and Joe Rogan. There's no topic restrictions, and you record in his Austin, Texas studio. It used to be in California, now it's in Austin, Texas. But instead, Kamala Harris's team wanted a 1-hour time limit, wanted to avoid certain topics like marijuana legalization due to her record as a prosecutor, and then a proposal that Rogan would have to travel to her. And Rogan rejected these, as he should have, insisting it must be a 3-hour unscripted format like Donald Trump did. like everyone else who's ever gone on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like, you're surprised if you see a Joe Rogan podcast that's below 2 hours. I don't even know if there is one. Maybe way back in the day. Maybe. But this was the group they needed to get in front of, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. You know, Trump appeared on Rogan's podcast for a 3-hour interview that garnered over 40 million views in the first week and generated millions, probably billions of views on viral clips that far outpaced Harris's, scripted appearances on Saturday Night Live. Who the hell watches that anymore? And then Rogan went on to endorse Donald Trump the day before the election, which most likely further amplified Trump's reach with young men. This was her biggest issue, and this is why she is not the leader of the party, because she cannot see the writing on the wall. Everyone can see it here. Everyone can see the writing on the wall. Are you just lazy? Like, I honestly, is that what you are? Are you just lazy? You're not willing. Look at the contrast between her and her vice presidential running mate, Tim Walz. Tim Walz is everywhere. This guy's going to Montana, and look, I lean politically to the right, but I'm going to be honest. This guy's everywhere. He's in Iowa. He's in Ohio. He's in Montana. He's in South Carolina. He's in North Carolina. He's in New Hampshire. He's in California. He's in Nevada. Tim Walz is all over the place. And although I don't think he will be anywhere near the nomination in 2028, he is by far the most active Democrat so far in this race. It's not even comparable. He is the most active Democrat in the race so far, who's vying for a 2028 run. And his messaging actually isn't half bad for what the Democrats need. Democrats and Democrat voters want a more fighting message. They, like Tim Walz said, they weren't elected to be roadkill. You actually have to go out and do something. But in Tim Walz, he's actually getting out there. Versus Kamala Harris, where she's just sitting back. She gave a speech to some Australian real estate agents. It's like, what the hell are you doing? You should be the leader of the Democrat Party, and this is what you're doing? You've been completely absent from public view, from leadership roles within the Democrat Party since the election. Harris really hasn't even delivered a major post-election speech or outlined a path forward, which has left a complete leadership vacuum within inside of the Democrat Party. It's like, this is ridiculous. You're going to give a speech to real estate agents. You're going to give a pre-recorded video to California Democrats who, either way, you need their votes either in 2028 or 2026. In this lingering reality of inaccessibility. Post-election has really amplified the criticism of her campaign strategy. The avoidance of unscripted media settings. That was a major failure to engage with certain platforms like Rogan's platform. It's like this was an antiquated, and this was a totally different media landscape, which is dominated by podcasts and online influencers. Even when she did do an interview with like Brett Baer, she shows up a half hour late and then cuts it 10 minutes early. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. She just tone deaf. It is just ridiculous that this was a major party candidate here. This is a major party candidate. And she can't look in the mirror. You cannot look in the mirror and see what you did wrong. You messed up so badly. So badly. And you show absolutely, A, no remorse for it, and B, you're not changing course. You're letting Jen O'Malley Dillon run the show. It's trying to be as risk-averse as possible. Good luck. No wonder you guys got smoked, and you deserved to get smoked. You deserved it. This is exactly why they got smoked. And why Kamala Harris will probably lose the governor's race in 26 and will not be the nominee in 2028, because she is doubling down on this ridiculous losing strategy. She's been doubling down since the day after the election on this ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Hey, I'm fine with it. I don't want the Democrats to win. I am perfectly fine with her doubling down on this. But it's just absolutely ridiculous, the incompetency. This was who was leading the Democrat ticket in 2024. This is how incompetent they were. I'll let you take all that for yourself. But that's going to wrap things up for today, folks. If you like the content we're putting out, drop down below, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And folks, we will catch you next time.